So we are now approaching 48 hours until the NBA trade deadline, and if you've been following the NBA for a while, you know that the bulk of trades occurred just hours leading up to the deadline, so we're most likely not going to be seeing the wave of trades coming in the form of Woj and Shams bombs until Thursday morning. But of course, you've already started seeing some trades go through, and the rumors continue to heat up, especially for the Chicago Bulls. More recently, the trade speculation around the Bulls being interested in Jakob Poeltl, which I covered in a video a couple days ago, and also the apparent trade deal on the table for Dennis Schroder, which was reported by Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report. So in today's video, I'll be discussing the possibility of this trade and really what to expect as we near the trade deadline. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, I should note that last season at the trade deadline, I put out a video a couple days before the deadline and cited that I didn't think the Bulls were going to be making any big moves because I really felt that this new front office, who had indicated it was going to be an evaluation year, that they were going to stick with that strategy for the rest of the season. Even though, yes, it was clear the roster needed to be upgraded on multiple fronts. And lo and behold, the Bulls were the most aggressive team at the deadline by trading for Nikola Vucevic, Daniel Tice, Troy Brown Jr., and Javonte Green. Really, the biggest one being for Vucevic. I don't think any of us saw that type of trade coming. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. And as I mentioned in my video on the Bulls being interested in trading for Jakob Poeltl, we have come to realize that this front office keeps things tight-lipped. And for me personally, I don't believe any trade rumors until I see them. And as I mentioned in that Poeltl trade in particular, that it was very unlikely to happen. And I won't go into all of the reasons why here as I explained it in that video. Now, as for Dennis Schroder, and the reports around the fact that the Bulls have actually made an offer to the Boston Celtics for Schroder, there's been a lot of different viewpoints from Bulls fans on whether or not they would want Schroder on this team. For me personally, I have a very hard time believing there would be any kind of trade offer in the works for Schroder to come to the Bulls unless it's an incredibly low offer. I'm talking like a future second-round pick for Schroder, maximum. Because the fact of the matter is, yes, Schroder is a good player. I'm not saying that he's not worth more than a second-round pick, but more so he's on an expiring contract. And because he was looking to get a massive payday this past offseason and shot himself in the foot and waited too long by turning down the Lakers' offer for an extension, he's playing for a contract and is looking to get that payday that he missed out on last offseason, which, for the Bulls, with how loaded they are in the backcourt and the long-term contracts they have with each of those guys in the backcourt, including Lavine if he's offered a big extension as well, re-signing Schroder is not going to make much sense for this Bulls team in the future. So trading for Schroder would purely be a half-year rental. And if it's going to be a half year, you should not give up a lot of assets to do so. Even a second round pick is pushing it. Not only that, but it's not like the Bulls don't have enough guards already. I know they're injured, but they're going to be back, or coming back next month anyway. By that point, how would you even be able to utilize all of these guys to where they are getting meaningful minutes? You're talking about sacrificing the development of Dosunmu and Coby White. I know some people have been saying, well, Schroder will take minutes away from Matt Thomas. Thomas is only getting minutes because guys are injured. He's normally not even in the rotation. It just seems like a very short-sighted trade for me, which is why I find it highly unlikely that this would even happen. And look, if it did happen, it likely means that Coby White is gone. Not that he would be traded for Schroder straight up, because that would actually be a horrible trade given the circumstances around Schroder's contract like I just mentioned, but more so that if the Bulls traded for Schroder, it likely would mean Coby would be included in another trade package that would get the Bulls a front court piece to give us more size, and Schroder would really just take Coby White's minutes, because Dennis Schroder can score. He'll give you 14 to 15 points per game on decent efficiency. He's also a good perimeter defender and passer. He would be an upgrade from Coby White for this season, because Schroder is all around a better player than Coby White as they currently stand in their careers. But long term, with Coby White still only being 21 years old, so yes, in short, I don't like this trade for the Bulls. Again, not that I think these reports are true anyway, because I always take anything that comes from Bleacher Report with a grain of salt, but if it was true, I don't like this trade at all, given it would most likely just be a half-year rental, and it likely means Coby White is on his way out, which I've said before, I think the Bulls should at least hang on to Coby for the remainder of the season and reassess in the offseason, since he'll be extension eligible by then, and the Bulls will have a better grasp of what is needed based on how they close out the season and how they perform in the playoffs. Now, it would be funny if a trade like this went down shortly after I uploaded the video, and I've said before, I'll come on and admit that I was wrong if that ends up being the case. But as for what I think is going to happen, or what the Bulls are going to do as the trade deadline winds down, honestly, I don't expect any big moves. I'm not saying that they won't make any moves at all. I'm sure some smaller transactions will be made, but I don't think the Bulls are going to make a drastic shift to this roster like most Bulls fans are thinking just because it happened last season. I don't think any trade deals are going to happen that are going to go down between, say, for Jeremy Grant, Miles Turner, Christian Wood, Sabonis. Like, no, those aren't happening, partially because the Bulls don't have the trade chips to make those types of moves. And if they do, they'll be sacrificing too much to do so. And you probably heard it best said from DeMar DeRozan the other night when asked about the approaching deadline from the media. He was pretty blunt in saying, look, we have Lonzo Ball, one of the best point guards, Alex Caruso, one of the best defenders, Patrick Williams, an up-and-coming power forward. All of these guys are still on our team, and they're going to be coming back, and the Bulls will be just fine. Granted, I do still think the Bulls need to beef up their front court, but I get what DeMar is saying. Like, this is a solid group of guys who are just shorthanded, and when healthy, they're one of the best teams in the league. So if you're the Bulls front office, it might be a bit overzealous to make an all-in type move when you truly haven't seen the full potential of this team and still have ways to improve it by going for guys on the buyout market and buying low on some guys who maybe have fallen out of favor with their respective teams. Or you have the ability to improve the roster even further this coming offseason. So I really do expect this trade deadline to be a little quiet for the Bulls this year, unlike what we saw last season, and it's because the front office values the chemistry that they have been able to build with this team. They've seen how good they can be when guys are healthy. They see how good they are on both ends of the floor, how good they are in transition, and maintaining that high pace for which they operate. They're not perfect, they can always still improve, and the Bulls, as currently constructed, even fully healthy, I still don't think that they would make it out of the East, but going into the offseason, they are going to be in a great position to upgrade their roster even further and truly putting themselves into title contention. The other question I think a lot of Bulls fans ask, though, is the Bulls championship window now? Like with DeRozan being 32, Vucevic 31, Lavine on an expiring contract, like, is this the year you have to go all in because you're probably not going to get the same level of production from DeRozan and Vucevic next season? It's a valid point. But at the same time, I think people forget that this roster has a lot of young talent as well, with Lonzo, Patrick Williams, Ayo, Coby White, even Lavine, who is in this prime. Like, this isn't going to be the aging Lakers or Nets whose championship window is 100% now. The Bulls still have a lot of room to work with, and I'll probably make a separate video on this topic because I could go on and on about this. But in short, no, I don't think that the Bulls must go all in now because their championship window is a now or never type situation. It just simply is not true. Not with the makeup of this roster and the fact that it's highly unlikely that DeRozan just falls off in the matter of one season. So, like I said, I think the trade deadline is going to be pretty quiet for the Bulls. I think we're more likely to see activity on the buyout market after the trade deadline because for the first time in a long time, the Bulls have the luxury of picking up some solid veteran players on a vet minimum deal who are looking to come to a winning team. I know a lot of people have been talking about Paul Millsap, who likely will be bought out by the Nets. For me personally, I'd much prefer a guy like Tristan Thompson or Derek Favors on the vet minimum just because they're younger, they give you a bit more versatility, solid defense. I think those would be the Bulls' best options. The good news is that Billy Donovan the other day in a press conference did hint at the fact that Patrick Williams is likely to return this season and that if everything goes smoothly, you could see the Bulls' full roster back and in the lineup for the last 10 or so games of the regular season, which would be huge, a huge win to the Bulls to have guys get some games under their belt together as a team before heading into the playoffs. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that, but at least in the short term, the next 48 hours, we'll keep our eyes closely peeled to what is going on at the trade deadline. I'll obviously keep you guys updated as we learn more, so be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.